Greetings and welcome, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, to Black World TV, the new black media, your black and intelligent news source. Black World TV, the new black media. Family, this broadcast is about the company Cisco, who recently fires workers for racial comments during a diversity forum. LinkedIn, another high-tech internet company, also experienced similar situation. Before I get into the commentary, though, I just want to state that there's a book called White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. And it's funny because in that book, she discusses how when she goes to different companies to talk about issues surrounding race, the people who are majority, or I'll say about 95 to 98% white, they usually have major issues with her content. There's always a pushback. She says they cry, they whine, and complain about the information. But Cisco, during a series of Cisco online hands-on meetings on race in early June, some workers posted comments in message channels that other staff and company management said were demeaning to black people, exposing racial divisions at the Silicon Valley tech giant and leading to the dismissal of a number of people. During the first video conference on June 1st following the killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police, Chief Executive Officer Chuck Robbins spoke with Ford Foundation President Darren Walker, who is black, and Brian Stevenson, a black lawyer and author who founded the Equal Justice Initiative, in front of 30,000 employees. The conversations about race continued in subsequent online global staff meetings. Quote, "Black lives don't matter, all lives matter," one worker wrote in the comments during one of the virtual all-hands meetings. Another said the phrase "Black Lives Matter" reinforces racism. Can you believe that? Because it singles out one ethnic group. Quote, "People who complain about racism probably have been a racist somewhere else to people from another race or part of systemic oppression in their own community," a third worker wrote in the chat section visible for all those online. Cisco, the world's largest networking company, said it fired a handful of workers for inappropriate conduct because it will not tolerate racism. Cisco said 237 of 10,400 comments made during the June 1st video conference objected to what was being presented or disagreed that the meeting should even be taking place. Most of the messages expressed praise for management, making the minority of reactionary posts stand out and sparking responses from other staffers. The posts, written while Robbins was announcing a $5 million donation to groups combating racism, shocked some executives. Quote, "I just felt sad to see it," Francine Katsoudas, Cisco's executive vice president and chief people officer, said in an interview. "I felt a ton of empathy. I knew that for the African American and black employees that were in the meeting, that it was heartbreaking to see that," unquote. In 2019, 3.8% of Cisco's U.S. workforce and 2.2% of leaders and people managers were black, according to the company's diversity report. A few employees who had written some offensive posts during the video meetings sent notes acknowledging their mistakes and said they were learning. But the remarks remain seared in the minds of some black employees who were shocked by the audacity of the display. Wow, and these people work at Cisco, one outraged employee wrote. And if they are bold enough to say those things at work for all to see, imagine what is said behind closed doors. Several employees said Cisco was guilty of hypocrisy because it wanted to silence those who disagreed with the movement to improve black lives. Quote, "No place for contradictory opinions or feelings," one wrote. Wow, this is my first and last comment then. Now, LinkedIn, a social network for professionals, also held an all-employee meeting about racism last month that ended up mired in bitterness, an event that was reported earlier by the Daily Beast. The company had an anonymous comment section, with some workers filled with vitriol against black people. Among the posts were those saying black people weren't hired as much because they weren't qualified, and that LinkedIn was trying to foist white guilt on workers. And get this, and that law enforcement killings of black people weren't important because more African Americans were murdered by members of their own community. The meeting devastated many black employees who were outraged by the remarks and became suspicious of some of their white colleagues. According to people familiar with the situation, since the meeting, some black workers at LinkedIn have been angered by what they see as a failure by senior executives to adequately respond to the incident. Executives at LinkedIn didn't seek to unmask those making the offensive statements because they had pledged anonymity for the online comment section to create a safe space and felt they needed to honor that pledge. After the meeting, LinkedIn CEO Ryan Rolansky said the display was appalling, apologized to employees, and promised anonymous feedback wouldn't be allowed in future virtual meetings. Well, let me just state for the record, although that's a step in the right direction, it doesn't remove the fact that you have hired a bunch of racists that work at your company. But I digress. The spokeswoman pointed to other subsequent executive blog posts for the company's response. Quote, "We will do the hard work to build an anti-racist culture at LinkedIn, hiring and growing employees from underrepresented groups and investing in a diverse and inclusive environment where all talent thrives." The company said it has donated $500,000 to the National Urban League, Southern Poverty Law Center, NAACP, Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, and other groups that work on advocacy and economic justice for the black community. LinkedIn is also matching employee donations of as much as $15,000 to these types of organizations. And so, lastly, overwhelmingly, our employees have been supportive of the company's actions and donations of support to the Black Lives Matter movement, a HashiCorp spokeswoman said in a statement. "We heard from a couple of employees who expressed their disagreement through internal private channels. While we understand that some employees might have differing opinions, we stand by our actions." So, family, I'm going to not continue with this broadcast, but I will leave a link to this article in the comments section. I'll pin it for you to click on if you choose to. But let it be known that these high-tech companies, I find it very interesting when they have a virtual company meeting, they find out who their real racists are at these companies. They reveal themselves, and I'm glad at least the companies are smart and intelligent enough to get rid of the slime. But it's also the flip side of the coin what's been going on with Nick Cannon, because as you can see, even when you have your own platform outside of these companies, they still know how to control you. That is the system of white supremacy. You know, before I close this out, there was one last thing that I saw very, very interesting, and I have to read this here. It says that LinkedIn's leaders also suggested the incident was a result of a few bad apples rather than any larger issues with the culture at the Mountain View, California-based company. The people said LinkedIn has one black executive in its C-suite, Chief People Officer Tallulah Hansen, who joined in June. The company's workforce is 3.5% black, in line with its tech peers, according to its most recent diversity report. And that's the part I wanted to read to you, family, is the fact that companies feel that they're justified or that they're not racist as long as they're in line with other tech peers when they hire only 3.5% of black people. When you see a company that is majority, I'll say 85 to 90%, or maybe that's a little high in my neck of the woods, I'll say 80% white, 85% white, and then the rest are people of color. It's funny that they think that black people have an up on this when we're like the lowest amount of staff at a lot of these companies. There was another part of this article that I really wanted you guys to hear, but since I'm going through this kind of fast and I don't want to linger on in my videos because I don't like to do that, I'm gonna end this off. But like I said, I'm gonna leave the link in the description. But if you get a chance to go through this article, you'll come across a part of the article where they mention how the percentages of minorities. And let me tell you, when they say that, they're not talking about just black folks. You know, they're talking about white women and, you know, disabled people and all these things that they've lumped into that category of minority. And that's why black people refuse to use that term any longer, because the term minority has nothing to do with blackness. It has nothing to do with black people. You guys have been pulling a game on black folks with that. We're waking up, just so you know. Get it right. Black World TV, please like and share. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. We'll see you in the next video. Peace out.